A bipartisan group of U.S. senators introduced legislation to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism over the abduction of nearly 20,000 Ukrainian children during its invasion. The bill aims to punish Moscow economically and pressure it to return the children. Senators Lindsey Graham, Richard Blumenthal, Katie Britt, and Amy Klobuchar criticized Russia's actions as crimes against humanity and emphasized that returning the children is a prerequisite for peace talks. The proposal initially considered including Belarus, but postponed it due to recent political developments, the New York Post has reported. The senators are also pursuing broader sanctions against countries continuing to buy Russian oil. Albania's prime minister announced his new cabinet will include an AI minister named Diela, tasked with managing public funding projects and ensuring corruption-free public tenders. Diela, a virtual assistant on the e-Albania platform, was launched earlier this year and appears in traditional Albanian dress. The Socialist Party, which won a fourth consecutive term, aims to achieve EU membership by the year 2027, though opposition parties remain skeptical, ABC News has reported. Legal experts note that Diela's official cabinet status may require further clarification. Lawmakers began swearing in the new parliament, which will also elect a speaker and formally present the cabinet. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro was sentenced to 27 years and 3 months in prison for plotting a coup to stay in power after losing the 2022 election. The Supreme Court ruling, issued by a 5-justice panel, made Bolsonaro the first former president in Brazil's history convicted of attacking democracy, drawing disapproval from the Trump administration. The Justice, Carmen Lucia, highlighted that Bolsonaro acted, quote, with the purpose of eroding democracy and institutions, referencing Brazil's history of coups and democratic struggles. 4 of the 5 judges convicted Bolsonaro of 5 crimes, including leading an armed criminal organization, attempting to abolish democracy, organizing a coup, and damaging government property and cultural assets. Bolsonaro joins other right-wing leaders worldwide facing legal consequences, such as Marine Le Pen and Rodrigo Duterte. U.S. President Donald Trump called the conviction a terrible thing and had previously labeled the case a witch hunt, imposing tariffs, sanctions on the presiding judge, and visa restrictions on high court justices, Reuters has reported. Bolsonaro's lawyers condemned the sentence as absurdly excessive and announced plans to appeal. Belarus has pardoned 52 prisoners and released them into Lithuania, with both Belarus and Lithuania thanking U.S. President Donald Trump for his role. The release is part of a broader warming of relations between Belarus and Washington, prompting the U.S. to ease some sanctions on Belarus's state airline. Lithuania's president celebrated the release on social media, emphasizing that no man left behind and noting that over 1,000 political prisoners remain in Belarus. The move followed a meeting between the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko and senior Trump administration official John Cole, who discussed further prisoner releases and regional security issues. Cole informed Lukashenko of the easing of some of the airline's sanctions, allowing the airline to service and purchase components for its fleet, including Boeing aircraft. Among the released were 14 foreign nationals, including 6 Lithuanians and 2 Latvians, 2 Poles, 2 Germans, and 1 each from France and the United Kingdom, CNN has reported. Belarus reported that Cole indicated the U.S. intends to reopen its embassy in Minsk, and passed along a letter and a gift from President Trump and the First Lady. Russian and Polish media described the pardons as humanitarian and a gesture of goodwill, though a full list of prisoners has not yet been released. The Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice John Roberts, ruled that the Trump administration can withhold $4 billion in foreign aid while the court considers an ongoing legal challenge. The temporary order responds to an emergency filing against a federal judge's ruling that the administration must release funds approved by Congress. The case was brought by organizations including the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition and the Global Health Council, which sued over the freeze tied to Trump's America First foreign policy and the restructuring of USAID. Originally, the administration planned to spend $6.5 billion of the allocated aid and freeze the remaining $4 billion ahead of a September 30th congressional deadline. But a federal judge's ruling prompted an emergency appeal, Axios has reported. Chief Justice Roberts has set a deadline of Friday afternoon for the suing groups to respond, while the ultimate resolution of the case will determine whether the frozen funds are released. Oracle shares jumped more than 28% in pre-market trading after the company projected its AI-fueled cloud revenue to reach $144 billion by its 2030 fiscal year, up from less than $20 billion this year. The CEO detailed a rapid growth trajectory, forecasting Oracle Cloud infrastructure revenue to grow from $18 billion this fiscal year to $32 billion, and then next year to $73 billion. The year after that, $114 billion, and then finally $144 billion over the next 4 years. The company's optimistic outlook coincides with a massive increase in its remaining performance obligation, which soared 359% to $455 billion in Q1 due to multi-billion-dollar contracts with major AI players including OpenAI, xAI, and Meta. Oracle has heavily invested in AI infrastructure, securing NVIDIA GPUs for its cloud services while expanding capital expenditures to $35 billion in 2026 and making workforce adjustments, including layoffs and potential cuts to raises and bonuses, Yahoo Finance has reported. Despite Q1 earnings slightly missing Wall Street estimates, Oracle's aggressive AI and cloud expansion plans, coupled with high-profile contracts and long-term revenue visibility, has fueled investor enthusiasm, pushing the stock to a 70% gain over the past year. China's newest aircraft carrier, the Fujian, sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Friday, marking its first passage through the body of water separating China from Taiwan. The Navy said the carrier, currently conducting sea trials, was heading to the South China Sea for training and scientific experiments and insisted its activities were not aimed at any other country. Analysts note the passage could signal China's growing military capabilities, although officials downplayed any message to the U.S. or Taiwan, emphasizing the strait as the most direct route to the South China Sea. The Fujian, China's third aircraft carrier, was accompanied by 2 guided missile destroyers near the disputed islands and is expected to be officially commissioned by the end of the year 2025, the Associated Press has reported. The move comes amid heightened regional tensions, following recent transits by Canadian and Australian warships through the strait, which China labeled as provocative. European nations remain on edge after a recent Russian drone incursion into Polish airspace as Russia and Belarus began 5 days of joint military exercises on Friday. The Zapad drills, rehearsing potential clashes with NATO forces, echo the February 2022 exercises after which Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine from Belarus. Poland and Lithuania, both bordering Belarus, are especially alert given the historical precedent of joint drills preceding military aggression. Analysts note that past Zapad exercises, including the larger 2021 drills, gave U.S. and British intelligence early warning of Russia's intentions toward Ukraine, France 24 has reported. With the war in Ukraine ongoing, NATO members are closely monitoring the current drills for signs of possible escalation or threats to alliance members. Authorities have identified Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old Utah resident, as the suspect in the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University on Wednesday. The Utah governor, Spencer Cox, said investigators tracked Robinson through surveillance footage, interviews with family members, and online messages with his roommate, which detailed plans involving a rifle recovered near the campus. Robinson allegedly engraved inscriptions on the bullets, including the phrases such as Bella Ciao and Hey Fascist Catch. Authorities matched his appearance to campus surveillance and then arrested him on Friday morning wearing similar clothing. Public records indicate Robinson had no prior criminal history, was last registered to vote in 2021, and attended Utah State University for 1 semester, NBC News has reported. The killing has sparked national outrage, with officials condemning the attack as a political assassination, while Turning Point USA remembered Kirk as a figure committed to engaging young Americans despite threats throughout his life. President Trump announced on Friday that he is sending National Guard troops to Memphis to address the city's high crime rates. Trump called Memphis deeply troubled and suggested the deployment could include the Army if necessary, responding to long-standing concerns about violent crime in the city. Memphis has the highest violent crime rate among U.S. cities with populations over 100,000, with 2,501.3 incidents per 100,000 residents in the year 2024, which is nearly 7 times the national average, and the fourth highest homicide rate at 40.6 per 100,000. Tennessee officials, including Governor Bill Lee and several Republican lawmakers, have supported the deployment, while some Democrats argue it unfairly stigmatizes the city and risks intimidating its residents, Axios has reported. The announcement follows Trump's broader focus on deploying military or National Guard forces to cities with high crime, a strategy criticized for inconsistent targeting and for downplaying recent crime declines in majority black cities like Memphis. Authorities say Tyler Robinson, 22, expressed opposition to conservative activist Charlie Kirk's viewpoints before allegedly carrying out the targeted killing, highlighting growing concerns about political violence in the United States. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said Robinson had become more political in recent months and confessed to a family friend that he was responsible. Key evidence included bullet engravings found on a rifle believed to be used in the attack and messages shared by Robinson's roommate. Robinson, who is believed to have acted alone, was arrested early Friday, a development announced by President Donald Trump, who praised Kirk as someone dedicated to helping young people. Kirk, co-founder of Turning Point USA, was shot while speaking at a debate at Utah Valley University and was pronounced dead hours later. Authorities recovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle near the scene and released photos and video of the suspect prior to the arrest, the Associated Press reports. More than 7,000 tips were submitted to law enforcement, though officials have not yet determined a clear motive for the politically charged killing, which Utah's governor called, quote, an attack on the American experiment. President Donald Trump has approved federal disaster aid for 6 states and tribal areas affected by spring and summer storms and floods. The declarations announced on Thursday provide funding for Kansas, North Carolina, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and tribes in Montana and South Dakota. In most cases, it took over a month for Trump to approve the request, continuing a trend of longer waits for federal disaster relief. Since taking office in January, Trump has approved more than 30 major disaster declarations, with approval times ranging from 15 days for Wisconsin flooding to 56 days for Montana tribal flooding. Delays in disaster aid can leave individuals without funds for essential living expenses and slow local recovery efforts, including debris removal and infrastructure repairs, the Associated Press has reported. The latest approvals provide public assistance for local governments and nonprofits, while in Wisconsin, aid for individuals was approved. Additional support for public entities may follow. The opening statement of Ryan Wesley Ruth, on trial for attempting to assassinate President Donald Trump last September, was cut short Thursday after he veered off topic during his self-representation. Ruth spent less than 5 minutes discussing unrelated topics including Homo erectus, global violence, and figures like Putin, Netanyahu, and Hitler, before Judge Aileen Cannon interrupted him and then ultimately ended his statement. He became emotional while mentioning American inventions, such as the Wright brothers, but was repeatedly admonished for exceeding the bounds of the court's instructions. Ruth faces 5 federal charges, including attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate, assaulting a federal officer, and illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. A standby attorney is available to assist with procedural and technical matters, and the judge may remove him as his own counsel if it is necessary. In contrast, prosecutors gave a traditional opening describing Ruth's alleged meticulous planning, including creating a sniper's nest near Trump's golf course, using aliases to track Trump, and preparing supplies for the attempted attack, CNN has reported. Assistant U.S. Attorney John Shipley emphasized the seriousness of the plot, stating Ruth intended to prevent Trump from being elected president and had planned the assassination with detailed preparation over multiple days. South Sudan's first vice president, Riek Machar, has been charged with murder, treason, and crimes against humanity over a March militia attack that killed 250 soldiers and a general. 7 of his allies, including a patrolman minister and an army deputy chief, have also been charged and suspended. Machar's spokesperson called the charges a political witch hunt, while tanks blocked roads to his Juba residence. The move raises fears of a return to civil war, despite a 2018 peace deal that ended a 5-year conflict between Machar's forces and President Kerr's Dinka-aligned troops, which had already killed nearly 400,000 people, the BBC has reported. The White Army militia, linked to Machar's ethnic group, carried out the attack, and tensions remain high amid sporadic violence and ethnic divisions. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is set to deploy a parliamentary maneuver later this week to expedite confirmation of roughly 40 lower-level nominees. The strategy draws on precedent set by Harry Reid in 2013 and Mitch McConnell in 2017, which altered the filibuster rules for executive and Supreme Court nominations, respectively. Thune's approach involves a procedural gambit, where a failed vote to break a filibuster allows him to demand a revote and assert that only a simple majority, rather than 60 votes, is required for the resolution. If successful, this maneuver would establish a new Senate precedent, effectively lowering the filibuster threshold for batches of lower-level nominees while leaving cabinet and judicial nominations unaffected, Fox News has reported. The plan aims to confirm all of the targeted nominees by mid-September, demonstrating how Senate rules and procedural strategies can dramatically influence the pace of confirmations even in a closely divided political chamber. Israel launched an airstrike on Doha, Qatar, targeting senior Hamas leaders, killing at least 5 members, including relatives of top negotiators. Hamas claimed Israel failed to assassinate its negotiating team, which was discussing a new U.S. ceasefire proposal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defended the strike as justified against those behind the October 7, 2023 attacks, while Qatar condemned it as a violation of sovereignty and international law. One Qatari security officer was killed. The U.S. called the attack unfortunate, but said eliminating Hamas remained a goal, with President Trump assuring Qatar such strikes would not happen again. The strike drew sharp condemnation from Qatar, the UN, and world leaders, who warned it could derail ceasefire talks and escalate regional tensions, the BBC has reported. Families of Israeli hostages also expressed fear that the move endangered their loved ones. At a House Oversight Committee hearing on September 9th, Representative Eric Burleson presented drone footage from October of 2024 showing an unidentified flying object over Yemen. The video depicts the object, described as an orb, being struck by a projectile fired from a second off-screen drone. Despite apparent damage and some debris, the craft immediately resumes its original course. Burleson asked journalist and UAP researcher George Knapp for his assessment, and both emphasized the importance of sharing such evidence with Congress, The Hill has reported. The footage raises critical questions about the nature and the capabilities of these unidentified aerial phenomena. The UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has dismissed Peter Mandelson, the country's ambassador to the United States, over his previously undisclosed ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The decision came after The Sun published emails from the 2000s showing Mandelson offering support to Epstein, even urging him to fight for early release before his 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from a minor. Foreign Office Minister Stephen Doughty told Parliament that the emails revealed a much deeper connection between Mandelson and Epstein than previously known, undermining the vetting process that cleared his appointment earlier this year. Mandelson expressed regret over his past links, claiming he was unaware of Epstein's crimes, but the revelations have sparked political turmoil for Starmer, just ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's state visit to the United Kingdom, the Associated Press has reported. James Roscoe, the deputy head of mission in Washington and a veteran diplomat, will serve as interim ambassador as Starmer faces renewed scrutiny over his judgment and a string of recent political setbacks. A veteran zookeeper at Safari World in Bangkok was killed on Wednesday after being mauled by several lions in front of visitors. Officials said the man, who had worked with big cats for more than 20 years, was attacked after stepping out of his vehicle in violation of safety rules. The lions dragged him to the ground and then mauled him for about 15 minutes before colleagues were able to pull him away. He later died at the hospital. Thai wildlife authorities have launched an investigation into the zoo's safety measures and the legality of its lion ownership, NBC News has reported. Safari World expressed condolences to the family, pledged support, and promised to strengthen safety protocols, while wildlife advocates warned that keeping dangerous animals in captivity always carries a serious risk. Australian authorities are investigating an American influencer, Mike Holston, known online as The Real Tarzan, for filming himself wrestling wild crocodiles in Queensland. In video shared on Instagram, Holston is seen grappling with both saltwater and freshwater crocodiles, sometimes sustaining injuries himself. Holston claims the content is for educational purposes, but the footage has sparked widespread outrage due to the extreme danger and illegal implications. Queensland officials emphasize that interfering with a saltwater crocodile carries a maximum penalty of $24,800 and warn that only trained, licensed individuals may handle these animals, CBS News has reported. The state is actively investigating the videos, with authorities and the premier condemning Holston's actions as illegal and reckless. Prince Harry made a surprise visit to Ukraine on Friday to show support for wounded service members. It is his second time visiting the country, which is currently among the contenders to host the Invictus Games in 4 years. The Games, which were founded by Harry, are a Paralympic-style competition for wounded, injured, and sick service personnel and veterans. His representatives confirmed his arrival, which came as part of a trip that included traveling by overnight train to the capital, ABC News has reported. Speaking to The Guardian, Harry emphasized that while the war cannot be stopped, efforts can still be made to support recovery and healing. On Tuesday morning, more than 60 shipping containers fell from the cargo ship Mississippi into the water at the port of Long Beach. The incident occurred just before 9 a.m. at Pier G while the vessel was being unloaded. Initial investigations suggest that the containers began to topple as crews started releasing the securing straps, triggering a domino effect. Goods from major retailers such as Costco, Target, and Walmart were among the lost cargo, ABC News 7 has reported. Port officials are investigating the cause, including a potential ballast imbalance, and have suspended operations at Pier G until the situation is stabilized. The Labor Department released a report on Tuesday showing that non-farm payrolls in the year prior to March of 2025 were revised downward by 911,000 jobs, far exceeding previous estimates. The revision is the largest on record since 2002 and suggests average monthly job growth was 76,000 less than initially reported, raising concerns about the overall health of the labor market. Sectors most affected by the revisions included leisure and hospitality, professional and business services, and retail trade, while transportation, warehousing, and utilities saw slight gains. Although the revised data largely covers the period before President Trump's tariffs, the weaker job creation highlights softer income growth and reinforces arguments for potential Federal Reserve interest rate cuts, CNBC has reported. The release also intensified scrutiny of the Bureau of Labor Statistics data collection methods, with the White House criticizing the agency and calling for new leadership to restore confidence in the reliability of employment data. UC-Berkeley recently released a video showcasing its humanoid table tennis robot, nicknamed Hitter, engaging in high-speed game of table tennis with human opponents. The robot demonstrated remarkable agility and precision, sustaining rallies of over 100 shots while maintaining balance with its left hand, emulating natural human movement. Hitter's performance relies on a two-part system: a high-level planner that tracks the ball and predicts trajectories, and a low-level calculator that translates those calculations into coordinated limb movements. Trained on human motion data, the robot can pivot, swing, and move laterally with fluidity, reacting to balls traveling up to 5 meters per second in under a second, Interesting Engineering has reported. Researchers combined the model-based planning with reinforcement learning to enable Hitter to adapt to unpredictable shots, perform lifelike swings, and compete successfully against both humans and other humanoid robots in realistic match conditions. President Trump announced that the Department of Education will soon issue new guidance to protect the right to prayer in public schools. He spoke at the Museum of the Bible, emphasizing threats to religious liberty in education. He criticized anti-religious sentiment and said some students feel punished for expressing their faith. He did not provide specifics on the measures, but reaffirmed a commitment to, quote, bring back prayer in schools, citing past guidance from his first term. He framed the initiative as part of a broader push to reinforce Judeo-Christian values in American life, as reported by CBS News. More than 90,000 Jeep Grand Cherokees plug-in hybrid vehicles from model years 2022 to the 2026 model are being recalled by Stellantis due to a software malfunction that could cause a sudden and unexpected loss of drive power. The issue stems from an overloaded microprocessor in the battery pack control module, which can lead the hybrid control processor to misinterpret signals and result in propulsion failure, potentially causing a crash without warning. To date, there have been numerous reports and customer complaints related to the defect, but fortunately, no crashes or injuries have been reported. Dealerships will begin receiving notifications on September 11th, and owners will receive official recall letters by October the 23rd. This situation highlights growing recall volume for Stellantis in 2025, which is grappling with quality control challenges, as reported by NPR. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced a ban on Sharia law in the state after Imam F. Qasim Ali Khan began pressuring Muslim-owned stores to stop selling pork, alcohol, and lottery tickets. The viral video of Khan confronting a store employee sparked widespread outrage and prompted Abbott to sign laws banning Sharia compliance and compounds in Texas. Abbott emphasized that any attempt to impose Sharia law should be reported to local authorities or the Texas Department of Public Safety. The Council on American Islamic Relations criticized the governor's action as fear-mongering, clarifying that Sharia practices are legal and protected under U.S. law, the Daily Mail has reported. A Michigan judge has dismissed criminal charges against 15 individuals accused of attempting to falsely certify President Donald Trump as the winner of the 2020 presidential election in the state of Michigan. District Court Judge Kristen Simmons ruled that the group, including prominent Michigan Republicans, will now not face trial. The charges, announced over 2 years ago by the Democratic Attorney General Dana Nessel, included forgery and conspiracy to commit election forgery, CBS News has reported. Investigators allege that the group met at the Michigan GOP headquarters in December of 2020 and signed a document falsely declaring themselves as the state's duly elected and qualified electors. This decision marks a significant setback for prosecutors, as similar cases in other states have also encountered challenges. French President Emmanuel Macron has appointed Sébastien Lecornu as the new prime minister, replacing François Bayrou, just a day after a vote of confidence led to Bayrou's ousting. Lecornu, 39, previously served as Armed Forces Minister, where he focused on France's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and he is now tasked with consulting political parties to adopt the nation's next budget. Bayrou's government fell after his proposed €44 billion budget cuts failed to gain support in the National Assembly, highlighting the challenges of leading a minority government. Lecornu's appointment has been welcomed by centrist allies, but it has drawn criticism from both the far left and the far right, with Marine Le Pen questioning Macron's approach and political strategy, the BBC has reported. The new prime minister faces immediate challenges, including addressing France's €3.3 trillion public debt, managing potential nationwide protest, and negotiating with other political blocs to avoid another political crisis and possible snap elections. A Auburn University professor was fatally stabbed while walking their dog in a residential area near campus. The suspect, who is a local man, has been arrested and charged with murder, with police investigating a possible motive. The incident has shocked the tight-knit Auburn community, prompting calls for increased neighborhood safety measures. The university is offering counseling services to students and faculty that was affected by the tragedy. As reported by CBS News, authorities are still gathering evidence to determine the circumstances leading to the attack. Astronomers have observed a gamma-ray burst, GRB 250702b, which is unlike any they've ever seen before, which erupted multiple times over the course of a full day. Gamma-ray bursts, or GRBs, are typically catastrophic events caused by massive stars collapsing or stars being shredded by black holes, and they usually last only milliseconds to minutes. GRB 250702b defied this pattern, with repeated bursts detected by NASA's Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope and the Einstein probe, making it a long-period repeating GRB, a phenomenon never before recorded. Follow-up observations using the Very Large Telescope and the Hubble Space Telescope confirmed that the burst originated from a galaxy billions of light years away, indicating an extraordinary, powerful extragalactic event, Space.com has reported. Researchers are still investigating the source and the cause of GRB 250702b, exploring possibilities such as unusual stellar collapse or an exotic tidal disruption event, while continuing to monitor the site with advanced telescopes to understand this mysterious cosmic explosion. Russia launched an unprecedented aerial offensive against Ukraine, deploying over 800 drones and decoys in what observers are calling the largest strike of the conflict so far. The attack targeted multiple key cities in Ukraine, with one drone striking Ukraine's Cabinet of Ministers building, marking the first ever hit on a government headquarters. Though Ukraine's air defenses intercepted a majority of the incoming threats, the barrage nonetheless caused widespread damage and inflicted civilian casualties at more than 33 sites. The Ukrainian Prime Minister denounced the assault as a brutal escalation and urged Western allies to impose stricter sanctions on Russian oil and defense sectors, as reported by the New York Post. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called it a direct attack on state institutions and reinforced his plea for increased NATO support and military aid. Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba announced his resignation following a resounding defeat in recent elections, deemed a significant blow to his leadership. The results marked a pivotal setback for his party's position and public confidence. In his statement, Prime Minister Ishiba took personal responsibility for the losses and urged his party to regroup and reorganize ahead of upcoming legislative challenges. His resignation sets the stage for a leadership contest within the ruling party, likely reshaping Japan's political direction, Reuters has reported. The resignation was framed by Reuters as a dramatic conclusion to a turbulent political chapter. The murder of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska on Charlotte's metro has drawn federal attention, with FBI Director Kash Patel and the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy confirming ongoing federal investigations. Patel indicated potential upcoming developments, while Duffy linked the case to President Trump's zero-tolerance crime message, warning that cities failing to protect public transit riders could risk federal funding. The White House condemned the attack and highlighted the perpetrator's criminal history, Fox News has reported. Local authorities are leading the homicide investigation with federal support, and the Trump administration is framing the case as a national test of accountability and public safety on transit systems. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has initiated a large-scale operation in Chicago, targeting undocumented immigrants, sparking some controversy. The operation aims to detain individuals with criminal records, but some critics argue it risks sweeping up non-criminal residents as well. Chicago's mayor and Illinois' governor have publicly opposed the move, citing concerns about community trust and safety. Local advocacy groups are organizing protests, claiming the operation could destabilize immigrant communities. NBC News reports that ICE defends the actions as necessary for public safety, while tensions with local leadership escalate. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has launched a sweeping ministerial reshuffle targeting his top team in an effort to strengthen governance and address internal challenges. Key figures, including Yvette Cooper, Angela Eagle, and Diana Johnson, were resigned or removed from the Home Office, signaling a shift in leadership priorities. Sarah Jones and Alex Norris moved into roles within the Home Office under newly appointed Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. Anna Turley was appointed as minister without portfolio in the Cabinet Office and will replace Ellie Reeves as Labour Party chair, while Reeves transitions to Solicitor General, as reported by the BBC. Other changes included the removal of the framing minister and an elevation of Jason Stockwood to business minister, reflecting Starmer's intent to bring fresh energy and private sector insight into government roles. A badly decomposed body was discovered Monday in a Tesla belonging to the singer D4VD at a Los Angeles impound lot. Police were called to the lot on North Mansfield Avenue after a foul odor was reported coming from the vehicle. The remains were found in a bag in the trunk, and identification is expected to be delayed due to the condition of the body. D4VD, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, is currently on tour and has been informed of the discovery. He is cooperating with authorities, NBC News has reported. Officials stressed that the case is being treated as a death investigation, and at this time, there is no known connection to another body found at a separate tow yard in South Los Angeles. DeCarlos Brown Jr. has been charged with a federal crime in connection with the fatal stabbing of 23-year-old Ariana Zarutska aboard a North Carolina commuter train. The attack, which appeared random and was captured on video, has raised questions about public safety and the handling of repeat offenders. Brown, who had 14 prior criminal arrests, faces a federal charge that could result in the death penalty. The incident has sparked a broader debate over crime policies in Democratic-led cities and the adequacy of mental health services, The Guardian has reported. Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee, had been living in a bomb shelter before seeking a safer life in the United States. A Gaza-bound aid flotilla, supported by activist Greta Thunberg, was reportedly targeted by drone strikes while docked at a Tunisian port. The attack damaged the vessel, Handala, delaying its mission to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. Organizers of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition condemned the strikes, alleging they were deliberate and aimed at preventing aid delivery. No casualties were reported, but the incident has raised concerns about the safety of humanitarian missions in the region, the New York Post has reported. Tunisian authorities are investigating the incident with no official statement yet on the perpetrators. A total lunar eclipse, commonly referred to as a blood moon, was visible across Israel on Sunday evening. The eclipse reached its peak at 9:12 p.m. local time, with the totality lasting approximately 82 minutes. Observers across the country experienced the moon's reddish hue as it passed through Earth's shadow. This celestial event provided a rare opportunity for skywatchers to witness the phenomenon, Haaretz has reported. The next total lunar eclipse visible in Israel is expected to occur in a few years. Postal traffic to the United States dropped by more than 80% after the U.S. government ended the de minimis exemption for low-value imports, this according to the United Nations Postal Agency. This exemption had previously allowed parcels valued at $800 or less to avoid customs duties, but its removal on August the 29th of 2025 shifted the responsibility for duty collection to carriers or CBP-approved parties. In response, 88 postal operators suspended some or all mail services to the United States, citing an inability or unwillingness to absorb the new duties. The Universal Postal Union expressed alarm at the sudden halt in global postal activity and the resulting operational disruptions. These developments underscore how changes in U.S. tariff policy can have immediate and sweeping international logistics consequences, as reported by The Guardian. Norway is voting in a tight election that could keep the Labour Prime Minister in power or return to the center right, led by Erna Solberg's Conservatives. While foreign policy issues like Gaza, Ukraine, and trade disputes have shaped the campaign, debate has shifted toward domestic concerns such as rising living costs, infrastructure, and taxes. A key flashpoint is the 1% wealth tax, which Labor wants to review but keep, while the right pushes to cut or abolish it. With no party able to rule alone, coalition building will be essential, and polls show Labor slightly ahead but facing strong challenges. Norway's EU ties remain contentious but largely absent from the campaign as parties avoid reopening the divisive membership debate, the BBC has reported. The outcome may hinge on whether the center-right can unite and on which of its leaders would claim the Prime Minister's office. Stock futures edged higher Monday as investors prepared for key inflation data following a weak August jobs report. Dow futures rose 0.2%, S&P 500 futures gained 0.3%, and Nasdaq 100 futures advanced 0.4%. The Producer Price Index arrives Wednesday and the Consumer Price Index Thursday, both critical for gauging the Federal Reserve's next moves. Recent hiring data fueled hopes of a Fed rate cut, possibly even a half point, this according to FedWatch. Markets remain near record highs, with investors watching closely to see if the economy can sustain momentum, as reported by CNBC. The Missouri House voted 90 to 65 to approve a new congressional map that would likely eliminate a Democratic-controlled U.S. House seat. The proposed map aims to give Republicans control of 7 out of 8 House seats in the state, with the Missouri Senate expected to vote on it by the end of the week. Missouri joins several other Republican-led states, including Ohio, Florida, Indiana, and South Carolina, in redrawing districts to favor GOP candidates ahead of next year's midterm elections. Democratic Representative Emanuel Cleaver, whose Kansas City area district is targeted, condemned the move as one of the ugliest moments in his lifetime, and then vowed to challenge the map in court, CNN has reported. The outcome of the redistricting could influence control of the House, potentially affecting President Trump's legislative agenda and political prospects in his remaining term. Democratic Fairfax County Supervisor James Walkinshaw won the special election for Virginia's 11th congressional district, defeating Republican Stuart Whitson. The Associated Press called the race at 7:36 p.m. local time, confirming Walkinshaw's decisive victory. The seat was previously held by Democratic Representative Jerry Connolly, who passed away in May after representing the district for over 15 years. Before his death, Connolly endorsed Walkinshaw, and his campaign transferred $1.8 million to a PAC supporting Walkinshaw in the primary, helping secure the Democratic nomination, Politico has reported. Walkinshaw's win in the Washington, D.C. suburbs strengthens the Democratic presence in Congress, posing additional challenges for Republicans managing a narrow majority and looming budget negotiations. Ford unveiled a new advertising campaign, Ready, Set, Ford, on Wednesday, marking what the company calls a fundamental shift in its branding strategy. The campaign moves beyond vehicle-focused marketing to highlight the people who buy Ford vehicles, emphasizing 4 core promises: capability, passion, community, and trust. The rollout comes as the auto industry faces uncertainty from tariffs and a slowdown in consumer spending, making brand loyalty and consistency increasingly important. Ford plans to unify all of its global brands under the campaign, with most markets adopting it by the end of 2025 and all markets by Q1 of 2026, beginning with a debut during Thursday Night Football, CNBC has reported. The chief marketing officer said that the strategy leverages Ford's 122-year history and, quote, American roots, while responding to consumer anxiety and optimism, reinforcing the importance of investing in the brand for long-term success. NASA scientists are using the James Webb Space Telescope to study TRAPPIST-1e, an Earth-sized exoplanet in the TRAPPIST-1 star system that may harbor water. The planet orbits its red dwarf star at a distance where surface water is theoretically possible, though astronomers first need to confirm whether it has an atmosphere. Using Webb's near-infrared spectrograph, researchers analyze starlight passing through the planet's atmosphere during transits, which creates a spectral dip that can reveal chemical composition. Initial observations suggest TRAPPIST-1e has lost its primary hydrogen-helium atmosphere due to stellar flares, but may have developed a heavier secondary atmosphere, similar to that on Earth, CBS News has reported. Scientists continue to explore the potential for oceans, ice, or liquid water on the planet, noting that a greenhouse effect from atmospheric gases could stabilize temperatures, making TRAPPIST-1e a key target in the search for habitable worlds. SpaceX launched 24 Starlink satellites into orbit from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off at 2:06 p.m. local time on Saturday, September the 6th. Approximately 53 minutes later, the satellites were deployed into low Earth orbit. The first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket successfully landed on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, which was located in the Pacific Ocean, Space.com has reported. This mission marked the 112th Falcon 9 launch of the year, and the 530th since 2010. The International Criminal Court has commenced its first ever in absentia hearing against Joseph Kony, the elusive leader of Uganda's Lord's Resistance Army. Kony faces 39 charges, including war crimes and crimes against humanity, stemming from decades of violence across Uganda, the Central African Republic, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Despite a 2005 arrest warrant and extensive international efforts, Kony remains at large, believed to be hiding in remote border regions. The ICC's decision to proceed with the hearing without Kony present has sparked debate, with his court-appointed defense arguing that the absence undermines the fairness of the proceedings, the Associated Press has reported. This case sets a significant precedent, potentially influencing future trials of other high-profile fugitives, such as Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. New research shows that liquid water flowed across the parent body of the near-Earth asteroid Ryugu much later than previously thought possible. The discovery comes from analysis of rock samples collected by Japan's Hayabusa 2 mission between 2018 and 2019, and then returned back to Earth in December of 2020. By examining radioactive isotopes, scientists determined that fluids moved through the asteroid's rocks over 1 billion years after its formation, likely triggered by an impact that fractured the parent body and melted buried ice. This finding suggests that carbonaceous asteroids like Ryugu may have contained far more water than previously believed, implying that such asteroids could have delivered substantial amounts of water to early Earth, influencing its oceans and atmosphere. Researchers emphasize the significance of conducting the study with samples smaller than a grain of rice, which required advanced techniques to isolate and analyze isotopes with extreme precision, Space.com has reported. The team plans to study phosphate veins in the samples to better date the water flow and compare their findings with NASA's Bennu samples to determine whether late water activity was unique to Ryugu or common among other asteroids. Archaeologists in Albania have uncovered a Roman burial chamber dating from the 3rd to 4th century AD, marking the first discovery of its kind in the Balkan country. The tomb was found on a plateau near the North Macedonia border after locals noticed unusual stones, prompting excavation by the Institute of Archaeology beginning in early August. The underground structure features large limestone slabs with Greek inscriptions, including the name Geliano, and is believed to belong to a wealthy individual, possibly accompanied by a family member. The tomb measures 9 by 6 meters and contained luxury items such as embroidered fabric with gold thread, glass plates, and knives, though it had been looted at least twice over the centuries. One inscription indicates the tomb was dedicated to the god Jupiter, and additional nearby stones may belong to another monument that remains under study, the Independent has reported. Local authorities are planning to develop the site as a tourist attraction, drawing attention from residents and highlighting Albania's growing interest in preserving its archaeological heritage. The Dearborn Heights Police Department in Michigan has unveiled a new optional uniform patch, the first in the United States to feature both English and Arabic script. Designed by Officer Emily Murdoch, the patch includes the Michigan State Seal and is intended to honor the city's significant Middle Eastern and North African community. Dearborn Heights has a 39% population of people from these backgrounds, while neighboring Dearborn stands at roughly 55%. By introducing the Arabic language patch, the department seeks to reflect and celebrate the cultural diversity of the residents it serves. The initiative sparked conversation online, though comments were disabled on the department's Facebook announcement, as reported by Fox 2 Detroit. Nepal's government is considering a ban on certain social media platforms, citing concerns over national security and misinformation. The proposal has sparked widespread protest, particularly among youth and activists, who argue it threatens freedom of expression. Critics claim the ban is a pretext to suppress dissent and control online narratives ahead of upcoming elections. The government has not finalized the list of targeted platforms, but TikTok is reportedly under scrutiny, as confirmed by the union minister. As reported by Associated Press, the situation remains tense as authorities weigh public backlash against their regulatory plans. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly acknowledged that Israel is facing international backlash, paying the price for its military campaign in Gaza. He spoke amid mounting global criticism over civilian casualties and escalating tensions in the region. Despite cabinet disagreements over media strategy and messaging, Netanyahu remains steadfast that strategic choices, though costly diplomatically, are necessary for national security. Critics argue that the government's delay in establishing a new media office inside the foreign ministry reflects internal disarray, as reported by the Times of Israel. Netanyahu urged unity at home and resolve in foreign relations, insisting that Israel's international standing must endure beyond short-term criticism. A World War II-era bomb was discovered in Bratislava, Slovakia, prompting the evacuation of hundreds of residents. The unexploded ordnance, found during construction work, posed a significant risk, leading to a swift response from authorities. Bomb disposal experts are working to defuse or safely remove the device, a process that could take days. Local officials have set up temporary shelters for displaced residents, and nearby businesses have been shut down. The Associated Press reports that the incident is highlighting the lingering dangers of wartime relics in Europe. A freight train collided with a passenger bus near Mexico City, resulting in at least 10 fatalities and numerous injuries. The accident occurred at the railway crossing, with initial reports suggesting the bus was stalled or attempting to cross the tracks. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but the remote location complicated rescue efforts. Authorities are investigating the cause, including possible signal failures or human error at the crossing. PBS News has reported that this tragedy has reignited calls for improved railway safety measures in the country of Mexico. Recent data reveals a significant decline in U.S. student test scores in math and reading, raising alarms about educational outcomes. The drop is attributed to disruptions from the pandemic, teacher shortages, and reduced funding in some districts. Experts warn that the decline could have long-term effects on workforce readiness and economic competitiveness. Some states are implementing recovery programs, but progress remains uneven across regions. CNN reported that educators are calling for urgent action to address learning loss and support struggling students. On September 5th, 2025, President Donald Trump threatened to impose additional tariffs on the European Union following the European Commission's decision to fine Google €2.95 billion for antitrust violations in the ad tech market. Trump denounced the EU's actions as discriminatory, warning that he would launch an investigation under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, potentially leading to retaliatory trade restrictions against the bloc. The Commission has required Google to propose remedies within 60 days, which could include structural changes to its advertising technology operations to address self-preferencing. Trump and senior officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, have increasingly criticized European tech regulations, framing them as unfair to American companies and an impediment to free speech. This development underscores rising tensions between the United States and the European Union, amid broader antitrust scrutiny of Google by the U.S. Justice Department, as reported by Politico. The European Central Bank kept interest rates unchanged on Thursday, amid ongoing economic uncertainty, particularly stemming from U.S. tariffs under President Donald Trump. Markets had anticipated a near-certain 2% key deposit rate, marking the second consecutive hold after the ECB cut rates in June from last year's record high of 4%. The ECB noted that inflation in the Eurozone remains around 2% medium-term target, and emphasized a data-dependent approach to future rate decisions, offering little guidance on the next steps. Concerns persist over global trade tensions, including U.S. tariffs on EU exports and potential retaliations, which could negatively affect growth, investment, and consumption across Europe. Eurozone economic growth remains sluggish, with just 0.1% expansion in the second quarter. And the ECB president acknowledged that while trade uncertainty has lessened, it has not returned to pre-COVID normal levels, CNBC has reported. The bank continues to balance maintaining inflation targets with navigating risks from volatile trade policies and global economic pressures. Polish and NATO forces shot down drones that violated Poland's airspace during a Russian aerial attack on Ukraine. Fighter jets were scrambled after more than a dozen drones entered Polish territory, marking the first direct involvement of NATO forces in the conflict. The Polish military confirmed weapons were used to neutralize the drones, and operations to recover debris were launched. Polish and Allied aircraft, along with air defense and radar systems, were placed on high alert to secure the skies. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said drone fragments were found in several towns and confirmed the drones originated from Russia, calling the incident a large-scale provocation. He announced ongoing coordination with NATO and convened an emergency government meeting. The defense minister confirmed aircraft engaged hostile objects and maintained contact with NATO command. Ukraine's foreign minister warned that President Vladimir Putin is expanding the war and testing Western resolve, urging NATO to intercept drones and missiles before they reach alliance borders. President Volodymyr Zelensky said 8 drones were directed at Poland, calling the incident an extremely dangerous precedent for Europe, Al Jazeera has reported. EU officials condemned Russia's escalation, with calls for a drone wall along the eastern border and stronger European defense initiatives. The Department of Labor's internal watchdog is reviewing the Bureau of Labor Statistics to examine how it collects and reports key economic data, including monthly inflation and jobs reports. Laura Nicolosi, Assistant Inspector General for Audit, announced the review in a September 10th letter to the acting BLS Commissioner, citing recent large downward revisions to payroll estimates as a primary concern. The BLS produces employment data through surveys of households and businesses, supplemented by state unemployment claims, and frequently revises prior month's figures as more complete information becomes available. The review will also scrutinize the BLS's handling of inflation data, including the Producer Price Index and the Consumer Price Index, amid recent U.S. inflation increases, CNBC has reported. The former BLS commissioner was fired by President Trump in August, who accused her of political bias following weaker than expected job growth and revised payroll figures. She has defended the Bureau's work, highlighting dedicated staff and challenges due to budget cuts. Economists have warned that undermining trust in federal statistics could harm the markets, investment, and economic growth, with ripple effects on households, businesses, and global markets. After the Nepali government imposed a sweeping ban on major social media platforms, mass protests erupted, led largely by Generation Z, escalating into violence across the region. Demonstrators torched the parliament building, stormed prisons, and set fire to politicians' homes, including that of the former prime minister, where his wife was inside during the blaze. The unrest turned deadly, with at least 19 people killed and hundreds wounded in clashes with security forces, drawing international concern and condemnation. The current prime minister subsequently resigned amid the chaos, though the protest continued as demonstrators demanded deeper political reforms beyond the lifting of the ban. The sudden turn from digital censorship to widespread destruction and bloodshed highlights deep-seated frustrations among Nepal's youth over corruption and a lack of opportunities, as reported by Fox News. On the morning of September 8th, two Palestinian attackers opened fire at a crowded bus stop in northern Jerusalem during rush hour traffic, killing 6 people and injuring at least 12 others. An Israeli soldier and a civilian quickly returned fire, neutralizing the perpetrators on the scene. Eyewitnesses and paramedics described a chaotic scene of broken glass, scattered belongings, and unconscious victims strewn across the pavement, as reported by the Associated Press. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site, postponed his upcoming corruption trial, and stated that Israel was, quote, fighting a war on multiple fronts, reflecting a heightened state of national tension. Meanwhile, Hamas praised the attack, calling it a, quote, natural response to occupation crimes, without officially claiming responsibility, and Israeli forces responded with intensified operations near Ramallah in search of potential accomplices. Elizabeth Zirkoff, a Princeton University doctoral student, was kidnapped by a militia in Iraq in 2023 and has now been released, as announced by President Trump. She holds dual Israeli and Russian citizenship and spent more than 900 days in captivity before being turned over to the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Her family, especially her sister Emma, who is an American citizen, expressed profound joy, with Emma stating, quote, "We cannot wait to see Elizabeth and give her all the love we have been waiting to share for 903 days. This, according to CBS News. The university president of Princeton released a statement saying that Princeton University's community is relieved and joyful about her return, and expressed gratitude to President Trump and all who worked for her release. Zirkoff had also been affiliated with the Washington-based New Lines Institute and had over a decade of experience with human rights organizations in the Middle East, highlighting her academic and humanitarian background. Scientists announced that leopard-like spots on a rock sampled by NASA's Perseverance rover on Mars may potentially have been created by ancient life. The rock was collected from the edges of a river valley which once fed into the Jezero crater over 3 billion years ago, a site the rover has been exploring since February of 2021. Perseverance drilled the sample from a rock back in July of 2024, and scientists have spent the past year analyzing it, publishing a peer-reviewed study in Nature while emphasizing that further investigation is needed to confirm a biological origin. Researchers noted the spots could represent a potential biosignature, features consistent with biological processes, but they are also exploring alternative geochemical explanations for the formation. The study involved over 1,000 scientists and engineers worldwide, with NASA highlighting the importance of peer review and the eventual hope of returning the samples back to Earth for a more detailed laboratory analysis, CNN has reported. NASA officials said this discovery brings humanity closer to answering the profound question of whether life ever existed beyond Earth, while ongoing rover surveys aim to better understand the environment where the rock was deposited. Multiple undersea communication cables in the Red Sea region were recently severed, causing significant internet disruption across parts of Asia and the Middle East. The outage impacted both high-speed connectivity for businesses and everyday online access for consumers. Telecommunications providers are scrambling to reroute traffic and initiate repairs, though replacements may take time due to satellite link limitations. The interruption highlights the vulnerability of global communication infrastructure to physical damage and geopolitical instability, as reported by NBC News. Experts warn that prolonged disruption could have cascading effects on financial markets, supply chains, and regional communications until the cables are fully restored. Irina Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee, was fatally stabbed on a Charlotte light rail train on August the 22nd by 35-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr., a career criminal with at least 14 prior arrests. Surveillance footage shows Brown attacking Zarutska and then calmly leaving the scene afterward. Her death has drawn outrage over perceived silence from mainstream media and local politicians, including Charlotte's Democratic mayor, while Republican officials criticized soft-on-crime policies. Friends, family, and her employer mourned her tragic loss, the New York Post has reported. Brown, who is homeless, was previously convicted of armed robbery and other offenses, but was free at the time of the killing. A recent study has revealed that human stem cells age more rapidly in space. Researchers from the University of California, San Diego monitored stem cells sent to the International Space Station. Over a month, the cells exhibited accelerated aging compared to those on Earth. This finding has significant implications for long-term space travel and human health, Engadget has reported. Understanding these effects is crucial for future missions beyond Earth's orbit. Comet 3I Atlas, an interstellar object, is now developing a tail as it approaches the Sun. Observations from the Gemini South telescope show a growing tail, indicating increased activity. The comet's composition, rich in carbon dioxide, causes it to become active at greater distances than typical comets. This behavior sets it apart from previous interstellar visitors like Oumuamua or Borisov, Science Alert has reported. Scientists are closely monitoring its approach to learn more about interstellar objects. President Donald Trump demanded that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu commit not to strike Qatar again, following a recent Israeli attack on Hamas leaders in Doha. The strike, carried out without consulting President Trump or his advisors, angered the White House and alarmed regional and global leaders, with Qatar's prime minister calling it a, quote, betrayal and reconsidering the country's security partnership with the United States. Netanyahu, however, remained unapologetic publicly and suggested that he might order another strike if Hamas leaders remain in Qatar, comparing Israel's actions to America's post-9/11 pursuit of terrorists. President Trump expressed disappointment during 2 phone calls with Netanyahu, demanding that Israel not repeat the attack, and later updated Qatari leaders, who reacted with outrage and warned of potential shifts in regional security alliances. The strike drew widespread condemnation internationally, with European leaders and Gulf partners warning of escalating tensions, while Hamas claimed the attack failed to eliminate its top leadership, Axios has reported. Despite prior cooperation with Qatar in mediating Hamas affairs and facilitating financial transfers, Netanyahu's recent actions have strained Israel-Qatar relations and complicated U.S. diplomacy in the region. Hong Kong's Legislative Council on Wednesday vetoed a bill that would have granted limited legal rights to same-sex couples who had registered their relationships or marriages overseas. The bill aimed to provide basic rights such as hospital visitation, following a September 2023 ruling by the city's highest court requiring the government to establish a legal framework for same-sex couples within 2 years. Despite the court's guidance, 71 lawmakers, mostly pro-Beijing, voted against the bill, marking the first veto since the legislature was revamped in 2021 to include only pro-Beijing members. Gay rights groups criticized the decision, saying it undermines court rulings and disregards the dignity of individuals, while Amnesty International and other organizations had called for full compliance with the court's mandate, NBC News has reported. Hong Kong leader John Lee reiterated that marriage in the city remains legally defined as heterosexual, and it is unclear how the government will now meet its constitutional obligation, with some groups suggesting an appeal for an extension of the deadline. A man suspected of murdering, robbing, and setting fire to an elderly Queens couple is now in custody, the NYPD announced. The suspect, 42-year-old Jamal McGriff, was apprehended Wednesday evening near Times Square after authorities tracked his credit card and received real-time updates through a police messaging app. Frank Olton, 76, was found tied to a pole in his basement with multiple stab wounds, while his wife, Maureen Olton, 77, was discovered severely burned on the first floor. Their son, a firefighter, responded to the fire after an alarm alerted him. There appears to be no connection between the victims and McGriff, who allegedly spent 5 hours in the home searching for valuables before setting it ablaze, and was previously on parole with a 30-year history of violent crimes, ABC News has reported. Police urged the public to exercise caution, noting McGriff's modus operandi of going door to door asking for assistance to gain entry, and emphasizing that he should be considered armed and dangerous. A moment of silence for conservative activist Charlie Kirk on the House floor turned into a shouting match between Republicans and Democrats on Wednesday. The conflict began when Representative Lauren Boebert requested a prayer for Kirk following the moment of silence, prompting Democrats to shout in reference to a school shooting in Colorado that occurred the same afternoon. Representative Anna Paulina Luna then accused Democrats of causing Kirk's death, which led to a raucous response from Democrats, including Representative Jahana Hayes, demanding action on gun laws. Lawmakers from both sides criticized the incident, with Representative Susie Lee calling it a reminder to turn the temperature down, while Representative Dan Muser described the scene as classless and blamed members on both sides for escalating tensions, Axios has reported. Democrats also argued that granting prayer for Kirk would have violated House procedures, while Luna insisted Speaker Mike Johnson should allow a prayer, calling the Democrats' objections disgusting and urging prayers for Kirk's family. House Judiciary Committee Democrats announced an investigation into the FBI, questioning whether Director Kash Patel is intentionally withholding information related to Jeffrey Epstein. The lawmakers, led by Representative Jamie Raskin, accused Patel of protecting individuals implicated in the Epstein files, citing his 2023 comments on a podcast where he suggested the FBI was shielding people on Epstein's client list. Democrats highlighted that Patel previously promised transparency, saying there would be no cover-ups and no stone left unturned, but now appears to refuse disclosure of the files once the identities involved became known. The letter references a New York Times report detailing nearly 1,000 agents reviewing over 100,000 pages of Epstein-related documents, yet little information has been released to the public, though some was reportedly shared with President Trump. Questions raised include why such a large review yielded no public disclosures, what instructions agents were given, what was uncovered, and whether decisions about the files were influenced by political considerations, Fox News has reported. The DOJ has provided thousands of documents to the House Oversight Committee, while debates continue over the alleged existence of a client list and claims that Epstein did not blackmail prominent individuals, fueling partisan calls for transparency. Consumer prices rose more than expected in August while jobless claims increased, presenting mixed signals for the Federal Reserve ahead of its policy meeting next week. The Consumer Price Index climbed 0.4% for the month, the largest gain since January, pushing the annual inflation rate to 2.9%, which is up 0.2 percentage points from July. Core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy cost, and is considered a better measure of long-term inflation, rose 0.3% in August, leaving the annual rate at 3.1% in line with forecast. Weekly jobless claims unexpectedly increased to a seasonally adjusted 263,000 for the week ending September the 6th, marking the highest level in nearly 4 years and exceeding economist estimates of 235,000. Shelter costs, which make up about a third of the CPI, contributed most to the monthly increase alongside jumps in food and energy prices, including a 1.9% rise in gasoline likely linked to tariffs, CNBC has reported. Stocks rose sharply after the reports as investors interpreted the data as increasing the likelihood of future interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. A significant fire broke out among a cluster of abandoned structures in northeast Minneapolis, leading to the collapse of multiple buildings. Firefighters were dispatched swiftly to the scene but found the buildings already engulfed in flames. Remarkably, no injuries were reported, as the area had been cleared and was not occupied at the time of the blaze. Emergency responders worked to contain the fire to the immediate site, preventing further spread into nearby occupied properties. City officials have launched a preliminary investigation to determine whether the blaze was accidental or intentional, as reported by CBS News. At a BRICS summit on Monday, India urged fellow members to address growing trade imbalances, noting its largest deficits are with BRICS partners themselves. Representing India, the External Affairs Minister highlighted record trade gaps with China and Russia, stressing the need for solutions to boost Indian exports. The call came as BRICS leaders united against U.S. President Donald Trump's steep tariffs, which Brazil labeled as blackmail and China condemned as disruptive to global trade. While India views BRICS primarily as an economic forum, China and Russia emphasize its geopolitical role, linking it to broader initiatives like the Belt and Road, CNBC has reported. Analysts say India wants the bloc to refocus on practical trade measures, including reviewing internal trade flows and expanding cooperation through mechanisms such as the New Development Bank. London-listed Anglo American has agreed to merge with Canada's Teck Resources in a monumental $53 billion deal to create a new mining powerhouse. In the merged entity, named Anglo Teck, Anglo American shareholders will own approximately 62.4%, while Teck shareholders will hold 37.6%. The new company will be headquartered in Canada with its primary stock listing in London, and it will also pursue listings in other key financial markets. Expected cost synergies reach about $800 million annually by the fourth year post-merger, amid soaring global copper demand driven by EVs and AI infrastructure. The move represents the largest mining sector merger in over a decade, underscoring strategic alignment amid rising commodity needs, as reported by Reuters. Australia's ANZ Group plans to eliminate roughly 3,500 jobs, or about 8% of its workforce, and an additional 1,000 contractor roles by September of 2026. The restructuring, led by the newly appointed CEO, aims to cut duplication, end non-essential projects, and foster a performance-driven culture. The bank will book a restructuring charge of $369 million in pursuit of long-term health and efficiency. ANZ reassured stakeholders that most customer-facing roles and positions tied to its recent Suncorp bank merger would remain intact. Despite the difficult cuts, the CEO deemed them crucial for the future, while the finance sector union criticized the plan as chaotic and harmful, as reported by Reuters. Two teenagers are in critical condition after a school shooting at Evergreen High School in Colorado, while the shooter, another teenager, died from self-inflicted injuries. The incident occurred on Wednesday, September 10th, around 12:24 p.m. local time, when the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office received reports that the student had opened fire both inside and outside of the school. Law enforcement did not fire any rounds, and after a brief lockdown, the high school, which serves about 900 students, was declared safe. The victims, who were also students, were taken to St. Anthony Hospital in Lakewood, Colorado, with one sustaining critical injuries and the other non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities are still investigating the shooter's motive, and it is unclear whether the victims were known to the shooter, while state officials, including Governor Jared Polis, monitored the situation closely, the USA Today has reported. Evergreen High School is located near Columbine High School, the site of the 1999 mass shooting, one of the deadliest in U.S. history. Nebius Group has inked a landmark agreement with Microsoft worth $17.4 billion over 5 years to supply GPU-powered AI infrastructure, with an option to expand to $19.4 billion. The deal underscores corporate demand for advanced AI compute capacity and comes as Microsoft continues investing heavily in AI infrastructure. Nebius, based in Amsterdam, will deploy capacity from its upcoming Vineland, New Jersey data center starting later this year. Following the announcement, Nebius shares surged, jumping approximately 47% in after-hours trading, reflecting investor enthusiasm about its strategic positioning in AI cloud services, CNBC has reported. This partnership could accelerate Nebius's growth and strengthen its competitive stance against rivals like CoreWeave. Americans are observing the 24th anniversary of the September 11, 2001 attacks with ceremonies, volunteer work, and tributes honoring the nearly 3,000 victims. Family members of those killed joined politicians and dignitaries at commemorations in New York, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Many attendees, like Denise Matuza and Jennifer Nielsen and Michelle Pizzo, wore shirts with the names and photos of their husbands who died in the attacks, reflecting on the lasting pain of the tragedy. And for some, like Ronald Buca, who lost his father in the attacks, the memorial is also a chance to educate younger generations about resilience, loss, and rebuilding after tragedy. Pizzo emphasized the importance of remembrance, hoping people, especially young people, take even a moment to reflect on the events of that day, the Associated Press has reported. This year's tributes come amid heightened political tensions, just one day after the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk at a college in Utah. Tiny Vinyl is a new miniature vinyl format designed for the streaming era. These 4-inch records offer a physical, collectible experience while aligning with modern music distribution. Artists can release their music on these compact records, providing fans with tangible memorabilia. The format is compatible with standard turntables, ensuring accessibility for vinyl enthusiasts, Ars Technica has reported. Tiny Vinyl combines nostalgia with contemporary music trends, appealing to both collectors and casual listeners. The assassination of Charlie Kirk deeply affected supporters who gathered at the Phoenix headquarters of the Turning Point movement to mourn the conservative leader. Attendees, including families and strangers, laid flowers, prayed, and embraced one another while reflecting on Kirk's unapologetic advocacy for free speech and conservative values. Many mourners expressed that his death was a watershed moment, highlighting fears that refusing to conform to left-leaning political beliefs could lead to violence. The killing is part of a larger pattern of political violence in the United States, including the June shootings of 2 Minnesota lawmakers and an assassination attempt on President Donald Trump back in July of 2024. Some mourners blamed political rhetoric, the media, and Democrats for creating a climate of hostility, while others stressed that political violence is unacceptable, regardless of the ideology, USA Today has reported. Supporters said that Kirk's death would not silence conservatives, but rather inspire them to continue speaking out, defending their beliefs, and openly embracing their values, with some even citing increased security measures and personal preparedness. Erin Pedersen, a 50-year-old Australian mother, was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years after poisoning her former parents-in-law and aunt by lacing a beef Wellington with death-cap mushrooms. 3 of the 4 victims, her estranged in-laws, died in early August of 2023, while the 4th, the Reverend Ian Wilkinson, survived the poisoning only after a liver transplant and months of hospitalization. The sentencing hearing, held in the Supreme Court of Victoria in Melbourne, revealed that Justice Christopher Beale cited Patterson's planning and lack of remorse as aggravating factors justifying a lengthy sentence. It emerged that Patterson had falsely told her children she was terminally ill as a guise to exclude them from the victims' gathering. The cases deeply shocked the local community, highlighting the devastating ripple effects of the crime, not least on Patterson's own children and the wider families. This report comes via Sky News. A man was fatally shot by police after allegedly slashing a police officer in the face with a 14-inch butcher knife inside the rear of Brooklyn's 73rd Precinct at Brownsville. The offender initially attempted to enter through a locked front door before forcing his way in from the rear. After attacking a female officer, he fled the premises, while still armed, prompting a pursuit that ended in an exchange of gunfire at a nearby street intersection. The suspect was struck multiple times and then later pronounced dead at a local area hospital while the wounded officer is recovering. The NYPD confirmed the events as described by NBC News, New York. French police arrested nearly 300 people on Wednesday as Block Everything demonstrations spread across the country, paralyzing traffic, sparking fires, and triggering violent clashes with authorities. The nationwide protest erupted in response to President Emmanuel Macron's policies and deep spending cuts, coming just days after Prime Minister Francois Bayrou was ousted in a parliamentary confidence vote and then replaced by Sébastien Lecornu. Protesters accused the government of forcing working-class citizens, students, and retirees to shoulder the burden of France's massive debt crisis instead of taxing the wealthy. In Paris, demonstrators repeatedly blocked the Beltway during rush hour, set trash piles ablaze, and clashed with police while firefighters battled a restaurant fire that threatened nearby buildings, Fox News has reported. Unrest spread to cities across France, with a bus being torched and widespread road blockades and heightened police presence, as 80,000 police officers were deployed nationwide to manage a protest movement fueled by anger at austerity plans worth $51 billion. Poland will close its border with Belarus at midnight on Thursday in response to Russia's large-scale military exercises, Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced. The drills, which are held every 4 years with Kremlin-allied Belarus, are designed to simulate conflict with NATO, and this year they feature tens of thousands of troops operating dangerously close to Poland and Lithuania. Tusk described the maneuvers as, quote, very aggressive, and said that they coincide with an increase in provocations from both Russia and Belarus. The exercises will include simulated use of nuclear-capable missile systems and will focus heavily on a strategic 70-kilometer NATO corridor between Belarus and Russia's Kaliningrad region, Politico has reported. Poland had previously restricted border access with Belarus, including closing checkpoints and halting asylum applications for migrants, accusing Belarus of weaponizing migration as part of hybrid warfare against Poland. Thailand's Supreme Court ruled that the former Prime Minister Shinawatra must serve 1 year in prison, rejecting his 6-month hospitalization as time served because it was deemed unlawful. The court found that Shinawatra was not seriously ill and likely prolonged his hospital stay to avoid incarceration. Shinawatra accepted the decision, stating that he still retains the freedom of thought to benefit the country. This is a significant blow to the Shinawatra political dynasty, particularly after Shinawatra's daughter was recently ousted as the prime minister. The ruling marks another showdown in Thailand's long-standing conflict between populist leaders and the military royalist establishment, as reported by CNN. A gas tanker truck exploded under a Mexico City highway overpass on Wednesday, killing 3 people and injuring 70 others in one of the capital's deadliest roadway accidents in years. The tanker, which was carrying more than 13,000 gallons of gasoline, tipped over and then erupted in flames that engulfed nearly 30 vehicles, sending thick smoke billowing across the city's south side. The mayor said that at least 19 of the injured were in critical condition, including children as young as the age of 2, while eyewitnesses described burn victims fleeing the inferno with clothing fused to their skin. Authorities identified the truck with markings from the energy company Silza, though the firm denied ownership, and later the Environmental Ministry revealed the company lacked valid insurance paperwork for fuel transport, ABC News has reported. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum expressed condolences to the victims' families and praised rescue workers, while officials confirmed the fire was extinguished and the highway was fully reopened by the evening. Norway's Labour Party has retained power but will rely on a complex tutti-frutti coalition that includes the Greens, Red Party, Socialist Left, and the Centre Party to secure a parliamentary majority. The surge of the populist Progress Party, which doubled its vote share and became a formidable opposition force, reflects growing polarization in Norwegian politics. The Prime Minister will now need to navigate this new multi-party alliance to pass legislation and manage the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The election campaign focused heavily on wealth taxes, oil fund investments, and immigration, revealing ideological divisions across voters. Labour's continued governance signals a cautious approach to EU issues, avoiding a referendum on membership and emphasizing stability in uncertain geopolitical times, as reported by Politico. Israel carried out a new wave of heavy airstrikes in Yemen on Wednesday, killing at least 35 people and injuring more than 130. This according to Houthi-run health ministries. The strikes, concentrated in Sana'a, hit a military headquarters and a fuel station, with nearby houses also damaged as rescue crews searched through the rubble for survivors. The attacks came just days after Iran-backed Houthi rebels launched a drone strike that penetrated Israel's defenses and hit the southern airport, part of their campaign in solidarity with Hamas. The escalation coincided with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's call for sanctions and partial trade suspension against Israel, intensifying the country's international isolation, the Associated Press has reported. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel continued urging mass evacuations from Gaza City, while preparing intensified strikes, but displaced Palestinians said there is no true safe zone as families struggle in overcrowded camps with scarce resources and worsening conditions. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot with a single bullet around 12:20 p.m. local time Wednesday while speaking at an event at Utah Valley University in Orem. Security camera footage from the campus shows a suspect dressed in all dark clothing, but authorities have noted the footage quality limits further description. 2 individuals detained for questioning on Wednesday evening were released after authorities confirmed they had no connection to the shooting. The Utah Department of Public Safety and the FBI are co-leading the investigation, working with the Utah County Attorney's Office, the Utah County Sheriff's Office, and local police, Fox News has reported. Multiple active crime scenes are being processed, identified based on the locations where the victim was shot and where the suspect and victim traveled. Kirk was rushed to a local regional hospital after the shooting, where he was pronounced dead. Tom Phillips, who had been evading authorities in New Zealand alongside his 3 children since December of 2021, was fatally shot by police during a confrontation over an armed burglary. Law enforcement officers responding to the burglary engaged Phillips, who allegedly opened fire with a high-powered rifle, prompting police to return fire. Police believe the man killed was Phillips, pending formal identification. Later that day, authorities located his children, aged 9 to 12, uninjured, at a local campsite, though they had been exposed to freezing overnight temperatures. The Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, characterized the event as sad and absolutely tragic, reflecting national sorrow over the outcome. In a statement to the RNZ, the children's mother said she was relieved that the ordeal had ended, but deeply saddened by the tragic circumstances, as reported by The Guardian. In recent local elections across Argentina, President Javier Milei's party suffered sweeping losses, raising questions about his political standing and public support. The electoral blow came against the backdrop of traditional parties regaining power in key provinces and municipalities. Political analysts see this as a major setback for Milei, whose outsider appeal and libertarian platform are now facing public scrutiny. The defeats may weaken his influence heading into broader midterms and reduce his leverage over future policy agendas, as reported by the Associated Press. Supporters of the other parties hailed the results as a return to familiar governance, while Milei loyalists criticized the outcomes as a protest vote rather than rejection of his broader message.